On the first day my wealthy biological parents brought me back to their estate, they arranged a marriage of convenience for me. My parents shrugged helplessly. This marriage was supposed to be for your sister, Chloe. But she claims she wants to be an independent, modern woman and isn't ready to settle down so early. I glanced at the photo of my groom-to-be. He was incredibly handsome. So, I gladly agreed. But I never expected that 10 years later, Chloe would suddenly show up at my doorstep. She casually wrapped her arm around Ethan Vance's, pulled out a ring, and said, "Ethan, I designed this wedding ring myself. I've traveled to every corner of the world, only to realize you're the one I love. I've decided to marry you." She then glanced at me. "Thank you for taking care of my fiancé for me. But after all, you were just my placeholder. You can leave now." I wasn't angry at all. In fact, I breathed a sigh of relief. I had stopped wanting this man a long time ago. All I wanted was the $2 billion that belonged to me. Ethan threw the wishing jar onto the passenger seat. I took the hint and sat in the back. Ethan froze. "What's wrong?" I immediately understood his reaction. This was the tacit understanding we had built over 10 years of facing hardships together. We agreed when we got married, I would never try to take Chloe's place. 10 years ago, Chloe had pinched her nose in disgust, dragged me back from the countryside, dumped me on Ethan, and immediately jetted off to Europe. My parents could only hastily announce my existence to the public to salvage the alliance with the Vance family. On our wedding night, Ethan got dead drunk, screaming Chloe's name all night. For 10 years. While Chloe was dancing on the beaches of Hawaii, I was playing the submissive daughter-in-law, sucking up to Ethan's stepmother, Victoria. While Chloe was taking selfies with penguins in Antarctica, I was drinking myself to stomach bleeding just to help Ethan secure his first major corporate contract. While Chloe was chasing auroras, watching sunsets, and exploring wild safaris. I was the one who lost my first and second pregnancies during Ethan's brutal family succession wars. I was even held at knife point by kidnappers. She had been living her best life for 10 years, and now she dared to return and demand that I leave. She wanted to reap the harvest she didn't sow? Who did she think she was? Ethan's lips twitched at my words. "Celine, actually we..." Before he could finish, Chloe's call came through. The phone was connected to the car's Bluetooth, and Ethan pressed the answer button. "Ethan, Mom and Dad told me that you two don't have kids yet. Is it because you've been waiting for me?" Chloe's voice carried an unmistakable mix of shyness and excitement. "Chloe, what nonsense are you talking about?" My mother's voice quickly cut in from the other end. The topic of children had always been my trigger. At 25, I got pregnant with my first child, only to be tricked by Ethan's stepmother into drinking and abortifacient. At 28, I got pregnant again. I hid the pregnancy carefully for 6 months, only to suffer from mysterious chronic poisoning. The baby died in my womb. The day of the labor induction, I cried until my lungs hurt. Ethan held me tight, weeping as he swore he would never let me suffer again. And he did keep that promise. Over the next 3 years, he drove out his stepmother and half-brother, seizing sole control of the Vance Group. At 32, as the head of a top-tier national conglomerate, Ethan gave his first major business interview. On camera, he politely spent a few sentences thanking me for my support over the years. A week after the interview aired, Chloe came back. Right now, Ethan caught my pale face in the rearview mirror and immediately cut the call. "Celine, Chloe doesn't know what happened during these 10 years. Don't take it to heart. She has always been too shielded. She speaks her mind, sometimes without thinking." "Save it," I interrupted him impatiently. "Since when does the cold, ruthless CEO Ethan Vance talk so much when it comes to Chloe? Since when do you explain things for other people?" Ethan's brow furrowed. He abruptly yanked the steering wheel and pulled the car over to the curb. "Celine, are you still holding a grudge against me for that night?" During our first year of marriage, Ethan's half-brother, Julian, suddenly broke out in severe hives. Victoria, Ethan's stepmother, insisted I had put peanut butter in his cookies. 2 old maids in the house held me down, forcing me to my knees on the floor. I looked at Ethan, begging for help. He had been with me the entire time. He knew perfectly well I hadn't done it. But Ethan kept his head down, saying absolutely nothing. That day, those 2 old maids slapped me 20 times. They didn't stop until my mouth bled and my cheeks swelled. Back in our bedroom, Ethan handed me ice packs with a face full of guilt. "The timing isn't right yet. I need you to understand." That understand forced me to swallow all my tears and humiliation. That night, I woke up from the throbbing pain and went to the kitchen for more ice. Through the cracked door of his study, I heard Ethan on the phone. Thank God it wasn't Chloe. She wouldn't have survived that. In that moment, I froze in the hallway. All that talk about building love over time, about facing hardships together to find true intimacy, it was a joke. To this day, Ethan had no idea I heard those words. After my sarcastic comment, he lit a cigarette and stepped out of the car, looking frustrated. Right then, Chloe's phone call came in again. He answered it, but forgot to disconnect the Bluetooth. Sitting in the car, I was forced to hear Chloe's sweet, cooing voice crystal clear. "Ethan, can you come over and stay with me tonight?" The Bluetooth was cut off instantly. Outside the car window, I saw Ethan stub out his cigarette. While listening to the phone, he kicked a pebble on the side of the road. That anxious, boyish look on his face made him look exactly like the 20-something-year-old he used to be.
Ha.
Is this the power of a first love? She literally lowered his IQ in a second. 10 minutes later, Ethan got back in the car, looking exhausted. "Celine, I'll drop you off home first. Tonight, I might have—" "Don't care." I cut him off sharply. I really didn't want to hear what kind of stupid, nonsensical excuse he would invent to lie to me for Chloe. Realizing I had lost my composure, I tried my best to soften my tone. "You don't have to report your schedule to me, Mr. Vance." Ethan couldn't miss the cold distance in my voice. He slammed his hand against the steering wheel in frustration. "Celine Miller, you've always kept your guard up against me. Are you really that eager to draw a line between us?" How ridiculous. He was the one constantly crossing the boundaries of our marriage, yet he was blaming me. I turned my face away, blinking back the tears that kept threatening to spill. My 10 years of experience told me, never let them see you look defeated. While we were in a deadlock, my mother called me. "Celine, your father and I are just terrible with words. We had to ask Ethan to come over and talk Chloe down. Can you just give your sister some time? She's still young. She'll figure things out eventually." I scoffed. How pathetic. She's 30 years old, and she's still young? Then why, 10 years ago when they forced me into this marriage, did they say, "You're an adult now, Celine. You need to learn to share the family's burdens"? I spoke, my voice icy. "Mom, I didn't expect you and Dad to still be the same, always doing whatever it takes to clean up Chloe's messes. But at least your tone is a lot gentler now than it used to be. Actually, I was found by my biological parents when I was 18. But Chloe couldn't tolerate my existence. She framed me again and again with methods that were laughably clumsy, yet my parents chose to believe her every single time. The last straw was when she threw herself down the stairs and claimed I pushed her. Without even asking for my side of the story, my father slapped me across the face. My mother screamed that I was evil and said they should have left me in the country. From beginning to end, they never asked for my opinion. They simply decided to send me back to the countryside. It wasn't until Chloe decided to run away from her wedding that they secretly brought me back to the Miller house behind my father's back. Honestly, the actual time I spent living with them was barely a year. "Celine, do you really hate us that much?" My mother's voice sounded incredulous. The question actually caught me off guard. I thought my complete lack of affection for them was painfully obvious. Did they honestly think 10 years of Chloe's absence had made us a happy family? Ethan didn't come home that night, which was exactly what I expected. My head throbbed all night, and I used that time to draft a divorce agreement that satisfied me. Being switched at birth, brought back, abandoned, and forced to marry, I never had a choice. At least with this divorce, I could be the one calling the shots. At 9 a.m., Ethan called. "About last night."
"Ethan, come eat breakfast."
"I made sunny-side-up eggs for you myself." As Ethan spoke, Chloe's voice chimed in from close by, immediately grating on my nerves. "I'm not interested." I cut him off coldly. I had imagined 100 scenarios of what they did last night, and none of them were things I wanted to hear. "Celine Miller, do you have to be this cold?" I remained silent, waiting for him to continue. On the other end, Chloe seemed to step closer to the phone. "Ethan, don't fight with Celine because of me. If she really can't stand me, I can just leave the country for another 10 years. "You don't have to do that," Ethan comforted Chloe softly before turning back to the phone. "There's a family dinner at the Millers tonight. I want you to be there." "You must come, Celine," Chloe chimed in with her sweet voice. The call ended, and I clenched my phone. Go? Of course I would go. My parents, my husband. What did I have to fear? 2 hours later, I showed up at the Miller mansion dressed in head-to-toe designer couture. Chloe, however, was sitting barefoot on the sofa, holding a thick stack of photos, excitedly showing my parents her travels. She was wearing pajamas, her hair casually messy. When she saw me, she froze for a second, then burst out laughing, covering her mouth. "Celine, it's just a family dinner. Why are you dressed like you're going to the Met Gala? Don't tell me you're trying to compete with me even at dinner?" My steps faltered, my hands clenching into fists. but I forced a smirk, looking down at her with disdain. Well, I can tell that no makeup look of yours took quite some effort. I'm different from you. If a reporter snaps a photo of me looking sloppy, it damages the Vance family image. You. Chloe bolted upright, her eyes instantly red, tears perfectly pooling in her eyes. You're just a thief who stole my life while I was gone. How do you have the face to show off? Hearing those words from Chloe, the fake daughter, was pure comedy. I looked at my helpless parents and burst into hysterical laughter. Haha, between the two of us, who is the real thief? When you're happy, you're the heiress of the Millers, and the family fortune belongs only to you. When you're unhappy, you say you're Chloe Miller and you need to find yourself. You packed your bags and ran, so why the hell was I forced to take over your mess and marry into this bullshit alliance? Celine Miller, Ethan, who had been silent, suddenly roared. Do you have to make your regrets so damn loud? His eyes were bloodshot. He marched up to me and raised his right hand high. I tilted my chin up, glaring back at him defiantly. I thought, go ahead, slap me. Maybe a slap would finally wake me up from this 10-year dream of being Mrs. Vance. Ethan, don't. Chloe grabbed Ethan from behind, her voice cracking with tears. We cleared things up last night.
I'm satisfied.
If you fight with Celine because of me again, I'll never forgive myself. Cleared things up? Why didn't he push her away? My mind was a chaotic mess, and the words slipped out of my mouth. Ethan Vance, you only have the guts to show off your power in front of me. In front of Chloe, you're nothing but a well-trained dog.
Slap.
The sharp sound echoed. The slap landed squarely on my face. Chloe hid behind Ethan's back, poking her head out with a triumphant smirk. Celine. My mother rushed over, her trembling hand reaching out to touch my face. Stay back, I screamed, taking a fierce step back to put distance between us. Then, staring straight at Ethan, I said word by word. Mr. Vance, I want a divorce. 10 years of my life. I don't think asking for $2 billion is asking too much. Ethan's pupils contracted. He froze on the spot, his eyes burning into me. $2 billion. Are you insane? Chloe was the first to react. Ethan made that money. My dad helped him. What does any of it have to do with you? You got to be Mrs. Vance for 10 years. You already hit the jackpot. How dare you ask for money? I ignored Chloe, keeping my eyes locked on Ethan. $2 billion, Mr. Vance. You get to fix your regrets, keep your empire, and marry your first love. It's a perfect deal. You aren't losing anything. Celine? Ethan took a step toward me, his movements urgent yet hesitant. I took a deep breath and held up my hand to stop him. Let's make this quick. We both got what we wanted in the beginning. Now it's time to go our separate ways. Before turning to leave, I looked at the four of them. The absolute worst thing that ever happened to me was being found by the Miller family. If I weren't a Miller, I would still be in that small town, running the bakery with my adoptive mother. She wouldn't have died of carbon monoxide poisoning. And there would still be at least one person in this world who genuinely loved me. When I woke up at the hotel, I had 99 plus missed calls and 99 plus unread messages. Celine, Mom knows you were just talking out of anger. Celine, I do not agree to this divorce. This isn't a decision you can make on your own. Celine, about the past. Your father and I are sorry. I sneered. The slap had already landed. There was no taking it back. I kept scrolling and saw a message from Chloe. Celine Miller, you're just putting things back to how they were. Why are you acting like a victim now? What's your play? Did you honestly think 10 years of being Mrs. Vance would make Ethan love you? He told me everything that night. He only married you as a shield to protect me from his stepmother. Celine, you will never win against me. I froze. He actually said that? Chloe's words were like a dagger, ripping away my last shred of dignity. To think that Ethan, to comfort his first love, would completely disregard my feelings. Everything I did to save face yesterday must have made me look like an absolute clown in Chloe's eyes. I forced myself to stay rational. I forwarded the divorce agreement and authorization letter to my lawyer. Then I booked the earliest flight out of the country. Once that was done, I took a screenshot of Chloe's text and sent it to Ethan. Your tactics and your taste in women have really gone downhill, Mr. Vance. Then I blocked his number and shut off my phone. On my way to the airport, my best friend, Rachel, called. Celine, check your Snapchat right now. Rachel's voice through the speakers was vibrating with pure rage. That narcissistic parasite just posted a private story and forgot I'm still on her burner list. I tapped the screen, opening the app with steady fingers. The story had been posted 12 minutes ago from the Miller penthouse. It was a 10-second video. Chloe was leaning against Ethan's sleek mahogany desk. In his private home office, a sanctuary Ethan had forbidden anyone, including his executive staff, from stepping into without permission. In the background, Ethan was sitting with his head buried in his hands, his broad shoulders slumped, looking like a man whose world was caving in. Chloe had panned the camera down to her own hand, which rested over Ethan's shoulder. On her ring finger was an emerald-cut diamond ring, the heirloom piece from the Vance family vault that Ethan's late mother had left behind. The caption read, "10 years of waiting. Some things are just destined to return to their rightful owner. Good riddance to the village girl who thought she could play dress up in my life." I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. Instead, a quiet, almost clinical chill washed over my chest. That ring in the video? Ethan had locked it in the bank vault on our wedding day, telling me plainly, "This belongs to the future mistress of the Vance family. When the company is stable, you'll wear it." For 10 years, I bled for Vance Group. I poured tea for venomous dowagers, stood between him and poisoned wine glasses, and spent sleepless nights analyzing balance sheets so he could outmaneuver Julian Vance. I never once asked for that
Ring.
I thought loyalty was proven in blood and quiet endurance, not polished
Stones.
How laughable. The moment the runaway princess strolled back into the city, he handed her the key to the vault. "Celine, are you there?" Rachel asked, her breathing erratic. "Tell me you're not going back to confront them. Don't give them the satisfaction of your
Tears.
tears are for people who still harbor illusions, Rachel," I said calmly, watching the airport expressway signs blur past the tinted cab window. "I'm 10 minutes from Terminal 3. Is the Geneva account operational?" Rachel paused, caught off guard by the ice in my voice. When she spoke again, her tone was razor-sharp. "The offshore entity is fully registered. The moment your signature clears through the Swiss notary, your personal stake in Vance Logistics, the 18% equity Julian secretly transferred to you during the buyout, will be liquefied directly into your private holdings. That's outside the Miller jurisdiction entirely."
Good.
I touched the faint, stinging bruise on my cheekbone where Ethan's ring had caught my skin the night before. Let the Miller family keep their prodigal
Daughter.
Let Ethan have his first love. Let's see how long an empire built on my blood lasts when Chloe is the one holding the foundation. "Where are you heading first?" "Zurich," I replied. "Then London. I've lived as Ethan Vance's shadow for a decade. It's time I remembered who I was before the Millers found me." I hung up, ejected the SIM card from my phone, snapped the golden chip in half between my fingers, and tossed the plastic shell into the cab's trash tray. Meanwhile, at the Vance Group headquarters, Ethan Vance sat in the high-back leather chair of his corner office, the air suffocatingly thick with the smell of stale tobacco. His phone sat on the polished glass desk, displaying the screenshot Celine had sent right before blocking his number. Chloe's mocking text claiming he had only used Celine as a meat shield to protect Chloe from his stepmother. Beneath the image was Celine's final sentence: "Your tactics and your taste in women have really gone downhill, Mr. Vance." Ethan stared at those words until the pixels seemed to burn into his retinas. The door to his office burst open without a knock. Chloe walked in, carrying a thermos of artisanal tea, wearing a tailored cream dress that looked strikingly similar to the understated couture Celine usually wore to corporate board meetings. "Ethan, you didn't touch your breakfast," Chloe said, putting on her softest, most radiant smile as she set the porcelain cup on his desk. "Mom said you stayed up all night at the office. You shouldn't let Celine's tantrums ruin your health. She's just trying to extort money out of you. 2 billion?
Who does she
Think she is? Even my father says she's being completely ungrateful." Smash. Ethan swept his arm across the desk. The antique porcelain cup shattered against the Italian marble floor, splashing piping hot tea across the hem of Chloe's designer dress. Chloe shrieked, stumbling back in horror.
Ethan.
"What are you doing?" Ethan slowly rose from his chair. His towering 6'2" frame cast a terrifying shadow over the room. His eyes were bloodshot, veins pulsing at his temples, his tailored suit rumpled and devoid of its usual aristocratic perfection. "Did you write this?" Ethan's voice was dangerously low, a subterranean growl that made Chloe's spine turn to ice. He spun the tablet around, displaying the screenshot of her text message. Chloe's face drained of color. Ethan, that was just girl talk. She was humiliating me at the dinner table. I was just defending my pride." "Defending your pride?" Ethan walked around the desk, his stride slow, menacing. He stopped inches from her, looking down with eyes so cold they seemed devoid of humanity. You told her I used her as a shield? Isn't that what you told me? Chloe stammered, backing up until her waist hit the credenza. You said you had to secure the company, so I wouldn't have to suffer under Victoria's thumb. You said you did everything to give me a safe world to come back to. I took the blows so the Miller family wouldn't default on their loans, Chloe. Ethan barked, his voice exploding through the quiet penthouse floor. I married a daughter of the Millers because your father begged on his knees when your family was on the verge of bankruptcy 10 years ago. And when you ran away like a coward, Celine stood in front of Victoria's hounds, took 20 slaps to her face, drank poisoned soup that ruined her womb, and never once complained. Chloe trembled, tears spilling down her cheeks, but her eyes held a stubborn, venomous resentment. Then why did you slap her yesterday? You slapped her for
Me.
you chose me. Ethan froze. His right hand twitched. He looked down at his own palm, his chest heaving violently. Yesterday, he had lost his mind. Celine's eyes had been so cold, so utterly devoid of love, looking at him as if he were nothing more than a stray
Dog.
the terror that had gripped his heart in that second, the sudden, suffocating realization that she had truly stopped caring, had driven him to a blind, panicked fury. He had wanted to shock her, to force a reaction, to break the terrifying wall of apathy she had erected. And instead, he had shattered the final thread holding them together. Get out, Ethan whispered. Ethan, take off the ring, he ordered, his voice dropping into a register of deadly.
Come.
Chloe clutched her left hand to her chest.
No.
You gave it to me. You said. I said get out before I have security drag you through the lobby like the squatter you are, Ethan snarled, stepping forward with such lethal intent that Chloe turned pale, scrambled for her designer handbag, and fled through the double doors, sobbing hysterically. Ethan stood alone in the cavernous office. He lunged for his private phone and dialed his chief of security. Track Celine's passport. Find her car. Check every flight, every train, every private charter leaving the country. 3 minutes later, the reply came through. Mr. Vance. Mrs. Vance boarded Swiss International Air Flight LX-18 bound for Zurich 35 minutes ago. The plane is already outside national airspace. Ethan dropped the phone. It clattered against the marble floor, joining the shattered remnants of the porcelain tea set. 1 year later, London, Mayfair. The spring rain washed over the cobblestones of Berkeley Square, reflecting the glowing chandeliers of the historic Connaught Hotel. Inside the private salon of an elite private equity firm, I sat by the floor-to-ceiling window, sipping a cup of Earl Grey. I wore a charcoal bespoke, double-breasted suit from Seville Row, my long hair pinned up neatly with a minimalist pearl clasp. The woman who used to wear muted, conservative dresses to please the Vance board had vanished. In her place was the managing partner of Aurelia Capital, a European venture fund that had spent the last 12 months quietly acquiring controlling stakes in high-tech supply chains across Asia and Europe. The audit is complete, Celine, Rachel said, walking into the room and dropping a thick leather-bound dossier onto the table. Ethan Vance finalized the liquidation payout of your $2 billion 3 months ago through the International Arbitration Court. He fought the terms through 42 separate appeals, trying to force an in-person mediation. And I didn't look up from my financial charts. Our legal team blocked every single request, Rachel grinned, taking a macaron from the silver-tiered tray. The judge ruled that since you held clear equity title signed during Julian Vance's asset forfeiture, his consent wasn't required. He paid every single cent, plus 8% statutory interest for the delay. How is Vance Group holding up? I asked lightly. Rachel laughed, a sound dripping with schadenfreude. A dumpster fire in slow motion. When you were there, you managed the supply chain logistics and maintained back-channel diplomacy with the elder shareholders who despised
Ethan.
The moment you vanished, Ethan tried to delegate your portfolio to professional managers, but Chloe insisted on taking over the Vance Charity Foundation and the global PR wing. Let me guess, I mused, swirling the amber tea. She treated it like an Instagram photo shoot. Worse, Rachel leaned in. 6 months ago, she hosted a luxury gala in Monaco. Under the Vance banner, embezzled foundation funds to buy private couture, and accidentally insulted the wife of Lord Sterling, the primary European distributor for Vance Group's semiconductor export. Sterling terminated their exclusive partnership last week. Vance Group stock plunged 22% in 5 trading sessions. And the Miller family? Ruined, Rachel said flatly. Mr. Miller bet the entire family reserve on a joint lithium mining venture with Ethan, assuming Chloe was going to marry Ethan, and merge the fortunes anyway. But after that gala disaster, Ethan locked Chloe out of the Vance estates. He hasn't spoken to her in 4 months. The Millers are bleeding cash, and their creditors are knocking on their doors daily. I closed the ledger. Karma is remarkably punctual. Speaking of which, Rachel's eyes gleamed with mischief. The Global Tech and Infrastructure Summit opens at the Grosvenor House tonight. Ethan Vance flew in on his Gulfstream this morning, desperately seeking a bridge loan from European institutional investors to save his semiconductor supply line. She slid a sleek, gold-embossed invitation across the mahogany table. Guess who is the keynote investor and chairperson of the allocation committee? I picked up the invitation, feeling the heavy, textured paper beneath my fingertips. My name, Celine Miller, managing director of Aurelia Holdings, was printed in flawless gold calligraphy. I looked at my reflection in the dark window pane. 10 years of suffering, humiliation, and silent tears had burned away the naive girl who once sought love from parents who despised her and a husband who took her for granted. What remained was tempered steel. Get my car ready, Rachel, I said, setting down the porcelain cup. It's time to see how my ex-husband handles an unscripted meeting. The grand ballroom of the Grosvenor House was a sea of black-tie tuxedos, diamond necklaces, and the hushed murmurs of old money tycoons and tech billionaires. Ethan Vance stood near the center of the hall, holding a glass of champagne he hadn't tasted. In just 1 year, the ruthless, invincible titan of the Vance Group had aged visibly. His jawline was sharper, hollowed by relentless stress and sleepless nights. The tailored Armani tuxedo hung slightly loose on his frame. His cold, dark eyes scanned the crowd with an edge of desperate exhaustion. Beside him stood Chloe. She was dressed in an ostentatious crimson ball gown, draped in heavy diamonds, her makeup meticulously applied to hide the anxiety clawing at her features. The Miller family was on the brink of bankruptcy. This summit was her last chance to force Ethan to commit to a public engagement and rescue her father's company. Ethan, Chloe whispered, her voice tight with forced sweetness as she tried to slip her arm through his. Lord Sterling is talking with the delegates from Geneva over there. If we go over together, and I apologize for the misunderstanding in Monaco, I'm sure he'll reconsider the contract. Ethan coldly pulled his arm away, not even looking at her. If you open your mouth in front of Sterling again, Chloe, I will have my security strip you of every piece of jewelry my company financed and leave you on the curb. Chloe flinched, her face flushing crimson with humiliation. Why are you treating me like this? I came all the way to London to support you. For the past year, you've been living like a ghost, sleeping in that dusty suburban house instead of the penthouse, refusing to look at me.
I gave up my freedom for.
You didn't give up anything, Ethan said, his voice flat, devoid of warmth. You ran when I had nothing, and you returned when you thought the table was
Set.
Celine set the table. You just came to steal the silver. Celine, Celine, Celine. Chloe hissed under her breath, her fingernails digging into her palm. That village orphan is gone. She took your $2 billion and ran away with some gigolo in Europe. Why can't you accept that she never loved you? She only wanted your money. Before Ethan could reply, the lights in the grand hall dimmed. The master of ceremonies stepped onto the elevated stage, tapping the microphone. Distinguished guests, ministers, and industry leaders, welcome to the annual Global Tech and Infrastructure Summit. Tonight, we are honored to introduce our keynote speaker and the managing partner of Aurelia Capital, who will announce the distribution of the €8 billion Sovereign Innovation Fund. The double doors at the side of the stage swung open. A woman walked out into the spotlight. She wore an emerald green silk column gown by Schiaparelli, clean-cut and regal, draped with an asymmetrical cape that flowed with effortless authority. Her posture was commanding, her high cheekbones catching the warm stage light, her gaze sweeping across the hundreds of global elites with absolute composure. The room fell dead silent. Ethan's glass slipped from his fingers.
Crash.
The crystal shattered on the plush carpet, champagne soaking into his polished
shoes.
He didn't notice. His eyes were locked onto the woman on stage, his breath catching in his throat as if all the oxygen had been vacuumed from the room. Celine. Ethan choked out, the name tearing from his chest like a prayer and a curse. Beside him, Chloe gasped, her eyes bulging in disbelief.
No, that's impossible.
That can't be her. She was just a country girl. How could she be on that stage? I stepped up to the podium, adjusting the microphone with practiced elegance. I looked out over the sea of faces. My eyes swept past the foreign dignitaries, past Lord Sterling, and landed squarely on Ethan Vance. I saw the shock, the agonizing disbelief, and the sudden, blazing flare of raw emotion in his eyes. I didn't flinch. I didn't smile. My gaze passed over him as if he were nothing more than an empty chair, a piece of decorative molding on the ballroom wall. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice carrying over the state-of-the-art acoustic system, smooth, confident, and utterly unshakable. "Tonight, we redefine the future of capital." The keynote address lasted 20 minutes. When I finished, the hall erupted into thunderous applause. As I stepped off the stage into the VIP reception lounge, a swarm of international financiers and tech founders moved toward me, eager to exchange cards and pitch their ventures. Lord Sterling was among the first, bowing slightly over my hand with profound respect. "Madam Miller," Sterling said in his crisp British accent, "Aurelia Capital's restructuring framework for the European semiconductor pipeline is nothing short of visionary. If your fund takes the lead, my syndicate will gladly reroute all logistical distribution through your network." "I appreciate your trust, Lord Sterling," I replied with a gracious, measured smile. "We only partner with those who understand long-term reliability over reckless ambition." "Celine." A voice, hoarse and trembling, cut through the circle of executives. The crowd parted slightly. Ethan stood there. He had pushed his way through the security perimeter, his breathing ragged, his face pale as chalk. He looked at me with an intensity so raw it bordered on madness. The surrounding businessmen exchanged curious glances, sensing the explosive tension. "Excuse me, gentlemen," I said smoothly to the investors. "Give me 2 minutes." Lord Sterling nodded knowingly and stepped aside with the others, leaving a wide, quiet circle around us. I turned my head, looking at Ethan with polite, distant eyes. "Mr. Vance,
It's
been a long time. I trust Vance Group's supply chain crisis hasn't completely overwhelmed your schedule." Ethan flinched at the formal, icy title. He took a step toward me, his hands shaking slightly at his sides. "Celine? It really is you," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I looked for you everywhere. Zurich, Paris, Singapore. You erased every single footprint. When a business transaction is concluded, Mr. Vance, there is no need to keep the communication lines open," I said calmly, adjusting the diamond bracelet on my wrist. "You paid the settlement. I gave you your freedom. We are strangers who happened to sign a contract 10 years ago." "Strangers?" Ethan's eyes turned instantly bloodshot, a wave of agony washing over his rugged face. 10 years. We slept in the same bed. We survived my family's coup. We built Vance Group from nothing. How can you call us strangers?" Because during those 10 years, I looked directly into his tormented eyes, my voice dropping to a cool, quiet whisper that cut deeper than any blade. "I was merely your placeholder, wasn't I? The convenient stand-in while you waited for Chloe to finish exploring the world."
no.
"That's not true." Ethan took an urgent step closer, his voice pleading, desperate, stripped of all corporate arrogance. "That night in the car, the words you heard through the study door 10 years ago, you misunderstood everything." "Did I?" I raised an eyebrow, my expression utterly unmoved. "Julian had placed listening devices in the master bedroom," Ethan said, the words tumbling out of him in a frantic rush. "Victoria was looking for any excuse to prove I had emotional attachments so she could target you."
I said.
"Those words to make them believe I didn't care about you. I was trying to keep the crosshairs off your back." "And what about the 2 miscarriages, Ethan?" I asked, my voice deadly soft. The air between us froze. Ethan's face went completely white. He looked as if I had physically driven a spike through his heart. "When Victoria poisoned my soup, where was your protection?" I continued, stepping half an inch closer, letting him see the total absence of forgiveness in my eyes. "When Julian's thugs held a knife to my throat at the construction dock, you arrived 30 minutes late because Chloe had called you from Florence, claiming she lost her passport. Do you think I didn't know?" Ethan choked, tears pooling in his eyes, threatening to spill over his dark eyelashes. Celine? I swear to God, I didn't know Victoria had spiked that tea. Until it was too late. I destroyed Julian for you. I threw them out onto the streets. I spent 3 years tearing down everyone who ever touched a hair on your head. You did that for your own throne, Mr. Vance, I said, cold as stone. Don't flatter yourself by putting my name on your ambition. Celine, a sharp, hysterical voice interrupted us. Chloe came marching through the crowd, her face twisted with a mixture of jealousy, rage, and sheer desperation. She grabbed Ethan's arm, glaring at me like a cornered beast. Don't listen to her, Ethan. Look at her. She's putting on an act. She probably seduced some old European billionaire to get that position at Aurelia Capital. How else could an uneducated country bumpkin run an investment fund? Chloe turned to the surrounding crowd, raising her voice to cause a scene. Everyone listen. This woman is a fraud. She stole my identity in our family. She extorted $2 billion from Mr. Vance, and now she's pretending to be high society.
Slap.
The sound was deafeningly sharp. The entire ballroom went instantly silent. Chloe stumbled sideways, falling onto the carpet, clutching her left cheek in
Sheer shock.
It wasn't me who had slapped her. It was Ethan. Ethan stood over Chloe, his chest heaving violently, his right hand still trembling in the air. His eyes were filled with a murderous disgust so absolute that Chloe forgot to
cry.
She stared up at him from the floor, paralyzed with terror. Shut your mouth, Ethan hissed, his voice vibrating with pure venom.
If
another filthy word about Celine leaves your lips, I will ensure the Miller family doesn't just go bankrupt. I will see your father and Julian in federal prison by tomorrow morning. Chloe burst into terrified sobs, curling into a ball on the floor. Ethan didn't give her a second glance. He turned back to me, his eyes full of raw, pathetic hope, looking like a condemned man begging for a reprieve before the guillotine fell. Celine, look at me, he pleaded, reaching out a trembling hand toward my arm. I know I was blind. I know I failed you. I let my childish obsession with an old memory blind me to the only woman who ever truly stood by me. But I love
you.
It took me losing you to realize that my entire life, my empire, my breath, it means nothing without you. He took a velvet box from his inner pocket and dropped to one knee right there, on the ballroom floor, in front of the world's most powerful financiers. He snapped the box open. Inside lay a ring, not the old Vance heirloom, but a masterpiece crafted from a flawless pink diamond, surrounded by intricate celestial engravings of the moon.
Celine,
the goddess of the moon. Come home with me, Ethan whispered, tears finally spilling down his cheeks, soaking into his stubbled jaw. I'll give you Vance Group. I'll give you my life, my name, everything I own. Just come back. The ballroom was so quiet you could hear the rain tapping against the high glass dome above. Dozens of high-profile guests watched in stunned silence as the most ruthless billionaire in the Asian market knelt like a beggar before the chairperson of Aurelia Capital. I looked down at him. I looked at the pink diamond that cost tens of millions. I looked at his tears, his crushed pride, his shattered arrogance. 10 years ago, if he had given me a single wildflower and told me he loved me, I would have walked through fire for him. 5 years ago, if he had held my hand in the hospital room after I lost my second child and told me we would face the world together, I would have forgiven. The scars on my body. Even 1 year ago, if he hadn't raised his hand against me to defend the woman who ran away, I might have walked away with a lingering ache in my chest.
But now?
Looking at him on his knees, I felt nothing. Not anger. Not triumph. Not even pity. It was like looking at a stranger who had dropped an orange peel on the sidewalk. I took a slow step back, putting 3 feet of pristine marble between us. Mr. Vance, I said, my voice smooth, melodic, and completely devoid of warmth. Aurelia Capital has reviewed Vance Group's loan application for the semiconductor rescue package. Ethan froze, looking up with wide, desperate eyes. The application is officially rejected, I said clearly. Your corporate governance is erratic, your executive leadership lacks emotional stability, and your brand reputation is compromised beyond repair. Ethan's breath hitched. Celine, please. Lord Sterling, I called out over my shoulder, turning my back entirely on the
kneeling man.
Yes, Madam Miller? Sterling stepped forward promptly. Let's head to the private dining room to finalize Aurelia's exclusive acquisition of your supply lines. We have a contract to sign. Right away, madam. I walked toward the double doors with steady, unhurried strides. Behind me, Ethan cried out my name, lunging forward on his knees to grab the hem of my gown, but my two private security officers stepped in cleanly, blocking him with impenetrable stone faces. Celine. Celine, look at me. Don't leave me. Please. His shattered, broken cries echoed through the grand ballroom, followed by the muffled gasps of the onlookers. I didn't turn back. Not once. 6 months later. Lake Como, Italy. The morning sun cast a golden shimmer over the tranquil, sapphire waters of the
lake.
I sat on the white terrace of my private villa, dressed in a simple linen shirt and wide-legged trousers. On the rustic wooden table sat a plate of freshly baked almond croissants, a pot of dark roast coffee, and a basket of fresh figs picked from the garden. The scent of blooming jasmine drifted on the cool alpine breeze. Rachel walked out onto the terrace, wearing sunglasses and holding a tablet, dropping into the wicker chair opposite me with an ecstatic sigh. Ah, the sweet smell of European retirement. Rachel poured herself a cup of
coffee.
Or rather, billionaire semi-retirement at age 33. How are the Asian markets closing? I asked, spreading fig jam onto a warm
pastry.
Total collapse for the old guard. Rachel smirked, tapping the screen.
Vance.
Group lost the semiconductor war. Without Sterling's distribution and without European bridge loans, Ethan was forced to sell off 60% of his core logistics assets to Aurelia Capital at a 40% discount just to prevent total insolvency. And the Millers? Bankrupt. Evicted from the estate 2 weeks ago, Rachel said, her voice completely unsympathetic. The father suffered a mild stroke from the stress, and the mother is currently working at a boutique clothing shop in the suburbs, just to pay the rent on their 2-bedroom apartment. And Chloe, the best part, Rachel laughed. She tried to sue Ethan for emotional damages and breach of verbal promise, claiming he owed her half his remaining assets. Ethan's legal team countersued her for corporate embezzlement during her time at the Charity Foundation. She was sentenced to 4 years in prison last Tuesday for financial fraud and document forgery. I took a slow sip of my coffee, feeling the rich, bitter warmth wash over my palate. There was no surge of manic joy, no petty celebration, just a deep, profound stillness. The Miller family had discarded me like trash when I was 18, brought me back as a sacrificial lamb at 20, and used me for a decade. Now their debts were settled. The universe had balanced the ledger without me needing to lift a single vengeful finger. What about Ethan? I asked casually, watching a white sailboat glide across the distant lake. Rachel's tone softened slightly, carrying a touch of grim irony. He resigned as CEO of Vance Group last month. He lives alone in that old suburban house where you two spent your first year of marriage. The staff says he hasn't left the house in 90 days. He spends his days restoring the old kitchen, staring at photos of you, and refusing to see doctors. Rachel looked at me carefully. He sent another handwritten letter to our Zurich office last week. 300 pages. Do you want me to burn it or? Don't bother burning it, I replied, setting the porcelain cup gently onto the saucer. Just leave it in the archive box with the junk mail.
Paper is
recyclable. Rachel smiled, a brilliant, proud smile. Understood, boss. She stood up, stretching under the warm Italian sun. Aurelia's new artisanal bakery chain in Milan is opening next week, the one you designed in honor of your adoptive mother. Are we flying in for the ribbon cutting? I looked down at the delicate silver locket resting against my collarbone. Inside was a small, faded photograph of my adoptive mother smiling warmly in front of her modest flower-dusted storefront in our small town. Mom, I made it back to the sun. Yes. I stood up, feeling the warm wind lift my hair, my heart light, unburdened, and entirely my own. Book the morning train. I want to bake the first batch of bread myself. I turned toward the sunlit lake, walking away from the shadows of the past, stepping effortlessly into a vast, golden future that belonged to no one but me.